I'm Wade Sankey. This is the Sankey Rodeo Show podcast from the cabin right here on the ranch in Sankey, America. It's not going to get any better than that. You just will go. I thought a lot about how I'm going to start this, and I know how I'm going to do it because do you remember Cody Whitney?
I do, but I couldn't tell you right now.
Okay. He used to ride bulls. He was behind you a ways, went to the PBR finals, went to the NFR a few times. We're pretty good friends, and we were talking one day just about life and rodeo, and I said, like, when you were a kid rodeoing, who'd you look up to? And he said, Clint Branger.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did he go to school in Powell?
No, he's from Oklahoma.
Is he?
Mm-hmm.
See, I know if I saw a picture or a face, I'd recognize him.
Yeah.
Because I recognize the name. I just, I'm really bad at, I'll never forget a face, but I'll forget a name.
Yeah.
And I don't like that, but I don't know what to do about it.
Yeah, I forget all of them. I do think I'm the world's best at forgetting names. Better at faces, but you got to be good at something, right?
That's right. But I know exactly what you talk about, and there ain't nothing I don't like worse than not knowing somebody's name. Even though a lot of times I'll just go up and say, hey, I know I feel terrible, but I cannot remember your name.
Do you remember going to Jim Bob's Brandon a few years ago when I hadn't seen you for a long time?
I remember that was like one of the last Brandons I saw you at before you took off and did everything that you've done. And I'm like, couldn't be any prouder of you.
Oh, well, thanks, appreciate that. But I knew you didn't know who you were talking to, but I remembered you.
I knew who I was talking to that day.
Really?
Oh, yeah, I knew you. I knew you were Ike's son, Wade.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really didn't know that you were, or I really didn't know that you had the fire in you then to do what you've done. And so my hat's off to you, because I guarantee you done a really good job. And like say, it's pretty cool to see,
Well, thanks. I don't know if I have or not. I appreciate the sentiments, but it's not done yet. We're just getting started. Hopefully.
Well, I understand that. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, but you're doing wonderful. And like say, yeah, I've been around your dad, and I'm not putting him down by no means, but he, would have we would have had a lot of trouble because he's one of them guys that is black or white. You can't help but love that. But man, there ain't no compassion there.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe you know him better than I do, and there is some there, but
no, you pretty well got him pegged.
But that's a little bit almost how my wife is now, the one that I married from Wyoming.
Mm-hmm.
She is that way too, and I'll question myself why I was attracted to that. Because that's what it was. It was attraction. It wasn't because if I'd have known what I was doing, I would have said, no way, So that's where I go, okay, why did I marry her?
Yeah, what's she going to think now that she knows you associate her with Ike Sankey? People are going to hear this, Clint.
Yeah, I know it. And I don't know, maybe that'll really show. I don't know. I think it's good.
If she's black and white, you're going to hear about it.
She is. Yeah. And that really is it motivates me, and your dad was our coach when I was in college, and he, I remember we rode at the college rodeo in Billings. I think the outdoor arena up there out of Lockwood, up on top of the rims there.
Yep.
I think they still have that there. But I had this Bramer bull of your dad's, and I rode him, and he was a pretty good bull, but he could darn sure place, and, but when I got off of him, I didn't get off very good, and I landed right on my back like a turtle, and I couldn't get up, and he was trying to hook me, and so I was kicking at his head. And your dad was like, get up, you damn bonehead. So I did, you know. But that was kind of, how your dad, and another really good day that I had with your dad was, I think, me and Deb.
Mm-hmm.
But he bought us, and we went over there and branded. He had some cows, and I don't know how many, but there was darn sure 60, 80 head pairs. And we roped and drug them, and we got them branded. And me and Deb, and I can't even remember, your dad, and I don't know. There might have been one or two other people there helping us that I don't even remember. But it was so fun. We had more fun that day.
Yeah.
That was the same place over there at Cody that I think Custer, your dad buried Custer on.
Yep.
I just love that story.
Yeah.
That's some cool stuff there. And then how you finally you said you called him and said, "We dug around here and I can't find him."
Yeah.
And he's like, drove over there and was, "I think you'll be right there." And that's where he was.
So to tell this story to everybody else, Ike owned this place in Cody, and it was 24 years after that horse had died. And I needed to find the DNA for Custer for the BHBA, because with the DNA deal, like you can't skip a generation. So like you could link your son to you and you to your father, but you can't link your son to your dad without having your DNA, right? And so that's why it was so important that I dug him up, because in 16 they started the DNA registry. And so in order to complete it, like without Custer, it's not legit. So to go get Custer, to make it legit, I had to go dig him up.
Wow.
He had sold this place and had been all split up and subdivided. And right there where you're talking about, that stud pasture was right on the road.
Uh-huh.
And that horse died one morning, and he just went and got a backhoe and just buried him right where he died.
Right where he died. Yeah, good.
And then I had to go knock on this guy's door that I'd never met before. "Hey, funny story, can I dig up your lawn?" "Why?" "There might be a horse buried here. I don't know if there is or not, but I need to look." And then we got to visit, and he kind of heard the rumor about that horse being buried there, and he was excited about it. I mean, he was from California, just ecstatic, and then let us do it. But there was no landmarks anywhere. There was a driveway, which was, I don't know, 200 feet from where that horse was buried. And Ike said he was out there, and we started digging, and he said, "Dig right here." Like, he's just kind of looking around and says, "Dig right here." And so we started digging there, and we ended up digging up about 5 acres of this guy's oat field. And he finally comes and gets me and says, "Why don't you come get this shit?" "What are you talking about? Like, we lost. We've been defeated. We're not going to find him. He's gone. He's somewhere." And Ike says, "No, we found him. Come get the DNA that you want." And it was not 4 foot from where Ike was standing and said, "Dig right here." He dug 4 foot the other direction, and there he is. Mind blowing.
Yeah, I know. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that's probably been a real benefit to your DNA and anything you want to do with horses, isn't it? Or do you sell horses, or you do just more or less just keep everything that bucks? I know you probably. Why not? I mean,
Yeah.
they're worth more to you as a bucking horse that you own than they are something that you sell, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, the bucking horse market's really, really fickle, and we've got so many jobs that if we raise one, we need them.
Right.
And that's what we're doing. I mean, we raise them for rodeo. You know the game as well as anybody.
Right.
But we don't really sell much. So as far as DNAing all of this stuff, it's not really beneficial to us, except for the fact that it helps us know what our program truly is. So the first time we started DNAing stuff in 16 or 17, Ike and Roberta took care of everything on paper with pictures. And so what they do is they'd go take a picture of a mare and a colt, like with Polaroid. They take a picture of that colt. So these are the markings. And then the next year when we branded, they'd hold up the picture of that colt, and they'd say, "This one's out of N1 schizo. Here's the markings." And then match the colt to the picture a year later. Seems foolproof. we got a lot of bays. As it turns out, DNA proved us not 100% correct. And so that's where it's really benefited us, is we've kind of cleaned up the
Oh
program.
yeah, for your own good.
Yeah, but as far as like income because of it, no, it hasn't helped us. I don't think it's really helping anybody in rodeo because rodeo's so slow to change. But that does exist. I mean, if I was starting this from scratch, I'd absolutely DNA everything. Have you still got some bucking horses?
I do. I just enough to, like say, keep me involved in giving me something to do that I, wasn't a part of at all. Like, a bull rider, an ex-bull rider that's raising bucking horses, why?
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the only reason I am is because there's a part of me, like we were talking earlier about, some days I wake up and wonder whether or not, was I really a bull rider, for, the first half of my life, or better, But I'm like going, my dad always wanted me to be a saddle bronc rider. I went to Bobby Berger's bronc riding school in Minnesota, and my mom wanted me to be a calf roper, and she sent me to Roy Cooper's calf roping school in
really?
Lewistown, Montana. Yep. And when I went to Bobby Berger's, Lyle Sankey was there as the bull riding.
Mm-hmm.
And I went over there and spent a lot of time listening to him when I was there at the bronc riding school. And then when I went over to Roy Cooper's calf roping school, I spent a lot of time over there at Gary LeFou's. Even got on a bull the third day when I was there, and got thrown off. But I mean, it was still, I went over there and asked him if I could get on one, because that was back when I really wanted to be a bull rider, even though I look back on that now and go, where did that come from, But anyway, yeah. So there's a part of me now today, I don't like really watching bull riding anymore, but I like watching bucking horses buck. And it's fun to watch your horses buck, and then it's fun to raise some horses because I really enjoy it. And then it keeps me connected to rodeo, and then I really enjoy the day-to-day stuff with the horses more than, the bucking end of it, even though I really enjoy that. Don't get me wrong. That's, there's a lot of pride there, and I haven't done that well, but like I say, it's still fun and I'm challenged by it. So I really enjoy it, I got 5 brood mares and 1 stud,
Just enough to go broke. Right?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. But it's not so broke that, that it's going to, devastate me, if I, more than anything, I think I break even, and that would be taking the ones that don't buck and taking them to a canner sale, and getting $350, $450 for them, because there ain't no other way to, if I could figure out a way to get a horse that don't buck and then gentle him down, but I don't have I've never found the time to be able to have that on my, agenda, to be able to spend that much time doing it, especially since I married Jana, because her place, there's 100,000 acres of BLM leases and approximately 5,000 deeded acres, but then they've got all this other, and they don't feed any hay in the winter. There's been really a couple winters where they had to feed hay. So it's an unbelievable nice place because they feed their heifers. They keep their their first calf heifers and feed them and calve them, like we're doing in Roscoe right now. Now they're not doing that this year. They just bought some cows, and they're just calving them at the place, like 60 head. And then they got about another 250 out in the Badlands. So at one time they had as many as 600 cows, but it's been the funnest experience being able to go out there and trail. We used to trail them all in. Now we haul them with a truck, but being able to, we were trailing them 30 plus miles, and I finally suggested to him, said, your calves, by the time we get them here, and then we brand them when we get them here, and then turn them out on the pasture, they don't heal back up from that.
Pretty hard on them.
It is.
Yeah.
It was. So I think it was really good that they did go. They bought a couple semis, and they truck their cows and calves now from the Badlands back in, and so it's been a really good thing.
Yeah.
But like say, it's been fun too because we're still in the saddle a lot, and I couldn't be any happier. I love horses, and like we were talking when we showed up today. I'm finding out that it pays off to actually have a kind relationship with your horse, because if he likes me, it makes my day go so much better. And when I get kind of impatient with him, I gotta stop and apologize, and I do that now, and I didn't used to do any of that.
Life.
Yeah. But I see the payoff now. The more I'm around animals now, that I just love animals. I mean, they are so cool. This cow, the second cow that had a calf the other day, I could not believe how good she was about bringing it in a sled, and then just putting water and hay in her pen. And then today we let the calf out, and you just walk in there, and she would just stand there. And as soon as I got her calf pushed out the gate to go out of the barn, she'd come right behind me and just respectful as ever. And I'm like going, wow, why can't I get them all to act this way?
Yeah. Because you wouldn't appreciate it if they did.
But yeah, it's unbelievable too. I can, if anybody says anything about me, they usually can relate it back to bull riding. But really, if you relate inside of me, if I relate myself back to where it got started, there is just a picture of a cow. And that's pretty much really what sustained me more than anything. Because all the years I rodeoed, I was buying cows and writing them off on my taxes. And I had a pretty good set of cows, paid for when I quit rodeoing. And so then when I came back to the place in Roscoe, I just put my heart and soul into that because I loved it there. Grew up there. I still, I'll never not love it there. But I came back and I've been just doing that. Everybody says, well, what happened to you? I went home and I got behind a cow, and it's been the best thing that ever happened to me because I'm challenged by it and I enjoy doing it. And it takes a horse, to move them and do all that. And so that's the other good thing about it too. And I really would, if I could go back and do it over again, I always, and I hear other people say it, even though it's not really good to say because there ain't no doing it. But if I could, I would learn how to ride. I rode broncs in college, and I had, a couple times my dad said, you get in time with one, it'll feel like sitting in a rocking chair. And I got in time with one. Dale Small had one, a black bronc that was, I can't even know if it was a mare or gelding, but I mean, that thing, just really jump and kick, just nice and come up underneath itself, and I think I even got off and landed on my feet like a real bronc rider.
Yeah, like Hawkeye.
Yeah, like Hawkeye. Yeah, no kidding. And what is the Rod Hayes' son, Dawson? He's every time he gets off, all 10 go rounds at the NFR, he just got on his feet. He didn't need the pickup man. You couldn't ask for a better way to stay safe. You don't have a pickup man. They had to learn to get out of his way when he got off, or they were going to run him over.
Yeah.
Because you go roaring in. Maybe he talked to him before and said he's going to bail off. But yeah, that'd be the only thing, the pickup man run him over. But that never happened.
I'm sure it has. And it probably will. That jumping off deal, man, it does look cool, but I'm against it.
Are you?
Oh, I've just seen too many guys
knees and stuff.
I mean, not in their career, but like Jess Martin. I mean, there's a lot of people that, yeah, that's
Yeah.
pretty much been the end of it, is jumping off after the whistle, which there's times you don't have a choice. But
Right.
yeah, doing it every single time, it's going to catch up eventually. Hope it doesn't to
Right.
Dawson.
Well,
But
it's definitely what you're
yeah,
saying, and makes sense to me because, as we get older,
yeah,
even if we're, not getting run over, it's going to catch up with you eventually. Yes.
yeah,
Especially, I know because I was going to get my knee operated on. I was convinced I was going to get it operated on. And then I get on my phone the next morning that I was going to go in and make the appointment at the doctor's office. And it came on there that said, well, stem cell and PRP. And I went and had that done. So I thought, well, give it a try, because I don't like anesthetic. I don't like blood clots,
hospitals, doctors.
all
Yeah.
that stuff. Yes. And so I went and did that. And I couldn't believe how that. And the other day, I just went in and had it done again. So I've had it done 3 times in the last 4.5 years.
Are you doing it in America or are you going to Mexico?
I'm doing it right here out of Joint Repair Clinic in Billings, Montana. But the doctor that I go to is from Bozeman. But I've referred a lot of people to him, and it was pretty expensive the first time I did it. And then he's given me a pretty good rebate now because
Yeah.
I've sent a lot of people to him too. Created some business for him, so that's been pretty good, and he's pretty good about it.
Yeah. Well, anything that can get you out of surgery is worth trying.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. Do you listen to many podcasts?
I do some.
Just the stuff. I'm not a health nut at all, but there's so
My
much
wife
more
is.
information. Yeah, like maybe there's some things that we've been thinking was healthy forever. Maybe that's a bit of an issue. We should work on that.
Oh, I'm totally. See, I don't know if you know it, but I'm a type 1 diabetic.
I did not know that.
I found 2 years after I quit riding, I got. I remember I couldn't see cow tag. Reading the cow tag number when I was calving, and that was in '02. And then I went on a fishing trip, and Tandy Freeman actually got to go on that trip. But he was the one that told me on that trip, he was like, you need to go get checked when you get back. And because I was dehydrated and everything that was going in me was going right through me. And I drank the boat that we were on fishing out of water. And so I was drinking pop. And when I got back from there, he was like, yeah, your blood sugar is over 350, and you need to go to the hospital and get on an IV and get straightened back out. And why I became a diabetic, I have no idea, other than I damn sure didn't take very good care of myself when I was younger, and there was a lot of days that I got on hungover. The only time that I got on a bull when I was drunk was when we had practice, and we were on a party, and we were over in Deb Greeno country over by Fromberg.
Here.
Yeah.
But it wasn't here.
Nope. But it was, over in this. And I don't know what we were doing, but we were just having fun. There wasn't practice. Well, we got a phone call. Practice was reinstated, and we'd better get there and show up and be there. And of course,
was this at Powell?
Yes.
Okay.
So we roared back to Powell, and I got on a bull that night. And I guarantee you the bull didn't buck. It maybe swapped ends and kind of kicked at its belly a few times. And I thought I don't know. It was really the best thing that ever happened to me because I did not ever let that happen again. Even though I did get on more than a few of them with a hangover. But other than that, my drinking didn't really take off until after I quit riding. And that's kind of way I thought I might have got diabetes too, is just because of that. Because I wasn't eating, and I was pretty close to, hurting somebody too, And it wasn't good. It wasn't good. It wasn't a good time in my life. I thought, I worked all them years and I was going to come home and things were going to pay off. I had my cows paid for, and my marriage just went, flip flop. And so anyway, that was like, say, where the drinking took off there, because I didn't know how to deal with it.
I gotta ask this: what, like, you see people go through this all the time in rodeo, like the transition from. I think it's because there's a clear cut goal in mind, like you strive to go to the NFR to get better all the time, and then you got to be a civilian, right? Like, you see people go through that.
Yeah.
How hard is that? Like, got any advice?
That I really don't, because there's so many different scenarios, and how do you go by, for me, I can only tell you my story about what drinking, looking back right now, today, I'm sober. And I've been going on 17 years and 4 months now without having a drink. So that was the best thing that ever happened to me. And being an alcoholic or drinking too much or whatever you want to say I am, or whatever was wrong with me, was, looking back, the best thing that ever happened to me, because it did get me into a 12-step program. But it's recovery, and it's not how much time you got. I'm not bragging that I have 17 years and 4 months. I'm saying I'm sober right now, today. And tonight, when I go to bed, I'm going to say I got the gold buckle again, because I'm sober. And that's been one of the hardest, best lessons I've ever learned in my whole life, right there.
So, do you think that drinking was like an addictive personality trait? The same kind of addictive personality trait that it takes to rodeo?
Yeah, I pretty much think so too. I mean, even though I always drank, I mean, I remember my dad's hunting camp. I'd get into some blackberry brandy, when I was, 14, when I was young, too young.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, I look back on that and go, how do other people, how can they drink and not get in trouble, or be able to live their life and just have one? See, I could, even when I didn't have trouble or a thing that I was pouting about. My deal was, what drove me to drink. Looking back on it, it was because of you. It was because of him. It was because of it. It was because of that bull. It was because of that judge. It was there was. So I think that is more of a just a wrong way to think, and why, I don't know. I can't answer that, other than I have a remedy for it now. I can say, you're none of my business. That judge is none of my business. That bull is none of my business. But what is my business is like putting a hula hoop around me, and I can drop it to the ground, and I can look at the space between where that hula hoop is and my big toe on both feet and go, that's my business. And everything else outside of that little ring is none of my business. And the more that I do that, the more peace and serenity I have. And that's what the 12-step programs of AA taught me. And it's a really beautiful way to live. It's been the greatest thing that ever, I mean, not the greatest thing that ever happened, just I like to give the Lord credit on that one because it wasn't me. It was him. And I'm a strong believer, I didn't used to brag on Jesus Christ, but I brag on Jesus Christ today. He is the coolest dude that was ever created. And it's because of him that I got remarried. I married a woman that, is a cowgirl. She's been on horses. She told me that she used to put a flank around a Shetland pony and it was loose, but she could pull it up and tighten it over the flank of the horse, and she was on it backwards.
Mm-hmm.
She'd get on it so where, her rear end was facing the other direction. And then she would pull up on that flank and it would make the Shetland kick. And then she had a stick back here. So if, whatever she needed to do with the pony, and, so that's the kind of, if that ain't cowgirl, I don't know, what is. And that was when she was just little.
That's pretty ranchy.
But yeah, it wasn't me that picked her. It was Jesus. Jesus picked this lady for me, and I couldn't be any happier and any more in love as we're going on 7 years now. Being married. Was that because of me? Absolutely not. And when my son's mother, that's what I always call her. But when
Fact.
yes, it is. It's fact. But when she went back to Florida, that was really one of the best things that ever happened to me too. And he went back with her. And this happened a lot through when we got married in 95, and then we remarried in 2000, got divorced and remarried in 2007, and then remarried again in 2016. No, 7. Married in 95, divorced in 06, and then remarried in 07, and then divorced again in 2016. Quite a run there.
Have you ever heard the term, it's hard to reheat French fries? Anybody ever told you that?
Not that way. That's good. But I've been asked many times, why did you do that again?
Well, I understand why. I mean,
yeah, my son.
You thought you'd give it a go to start with, so there's hope, and then, you got a son.
That's right. And that's been the best thing, because when he went back with her to Florida and went to school, he came back that summer, and before he left, he said, I don't know what I'm going to do. He said, I don't like going to school down there, but I don't know.
How old was he?
He was 16. He was born in 2000. And then she left in that year, let's see, about September of 16. And because I remember walking out of the courthouse that day that I got the decree, that says
it's official.
It's official.
Yeah. And
I remember walking out of the courthouse, or the judicial whatever place that you go to in Red Lodge, and I remember looking up the street at the Pabst Blue Ribbon, or that bar, the Blue Ribbon up there, and I spent a little time in there, and I remember looking up the street, because it's D-Day, and I never felt so free in my life. And I was like, I looked up the street at the Blue, and then I looked back over, and I could look across town there at the grocery store. And I went and got in my truck, and I drove over to the grocery store, and I got one of those strawberry or cherry Danish. And I was like, man, I love them, and a cup of coffee. And I was in heaven, and I drove back over to Roscoe and went to work. And it was cool.
That little hula hoop you're talking about, you could also refer to that as just Roscoe. Basically.
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, because that's where the cows are. You know, and I thought I wouldn't really be able to take that. It's right at 3 hours to Worland from our place, and then it's 4 to the ranch south, 33 miles south of Ten Sleep. And I didn't know how I would do well if I would do so well with that, but it's unbelievable. That's one of the prettiest places I've been to too. It's
I've been down there south of Ten Sleep. I was working for a log home guy, and we went down there, probably not that far down there, but we worked on a house down there. And yeah, I mean, driving through Worland, growing up around that country my whole life, you'd never guess. But it's pretty, and it's pretty good country.
it is. You know, there's so many Indian artifacts down there. There's teepee rings still
Hieroglyphics.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then all the arrows, and and then the buffalo trails. It's called the road from Ten Sleep down to her ranch, which Lysite would be further south. You can either go to Riverton or go to Shoshone.
And we shouldn't tell people exactly where it is, or they'll go find all your stuff.
You're right. You're right. Sorry. Thanks for interceding there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's if I was around, when it was, and it was supposedly the name Ten Sleep came from, it was 10 sleeps from Bridger, Montana to Ten Sleep. So that was how it got its name.
Yeah.
And then what's the bronc rider's name that just died of cancer there a few years ago? He was from Ten Sleep.
Gary McDaniel.
Gary McDaniel.
Yeah.
Dang. Yeah. Out of sight, out of mind again.
He's been brought up on almost every one of these podcasts that I've done so far.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Kirk Tolman is a neighbor to them down there, and he really liked him, and went down to his. After he died, he went down there and spent close to a week with the family, and went to the funeral and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty cool. Yeah.
I got to interject and tell a Gary story. I don't know if you've heard this or not, but the story that I heard it from J.D. Hamaker. And J.D. said that he had Bobby Joe's skull somewhere. And he saddles old Bobby Joe, goes to do something, comes back, and Gary had Bobby Joe. That's how it goes. Gary McDaniels had Bobby Joe. So he saddles her, goes and does whatever he's going to do, or gelding, comes back. Somebody had padlocked his stirrups together above Bobby Joe's neck, held his stirrups up, padlocked
I
them
hadn't heard
together,
that story.
and would give him the key back. I'm pretty sure it was JD that did it. JD's the one that told me the story. I guess now that Gary's not here to find out the truth, it doesn't really matter, but yeah, that's a pretty good joke right there.
Did he finally unlock them? He about had to have, I would think.
Eventually they took it off of there somehow, but yeah, they have the best one that's ever lived. Have some asshole lock your stirrups together.
Oh man, yeah, that's cool. When I went into Harry Vold's, I went in there in 2012. I got some horses from Scruffy. But I drove down there and looked at what and then I ended up getting 4 or 5, I can't remember. But it was fun going into Ike's place because there was a picture
Harry's
at Harry's, of Ty Murray on Bobby Joe's skull and on his entryway there. So that was when you said Bobby Joe's skull, that just flashed into my head right there.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that day. Finally, it was so much fun finally to get to Harry's ranch and see it. It was amazing. Man, that's a beautiful place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is Kirsten, did she do something? Somebody told me that she sold out.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've heard too, but I don't know for sure. But talking about archways.
Yeah.
Going back to Roscoe, I remember driving through Roscoe one time, and I've never been to your place, but I have no idea what I was doing. But for some reason, I was on that road that goes through Roscoe, and drive through there, and I'm looking around thinking, I think Clint's place is over here somewhere, and then drove by that sign and saw that bull rider with the orange chaps. Found it.
That worked.
Is that still there?
It is, and it's cool that you call them orange chaps, because that's what I wore, was orange. My high school colors, black and white, or orange and black. But that guy that did that sign for me. He's really good with steel.
Yeah, nailed it.
Yes, and that's a bull that I had in Calgary, and I guarantee it's just like the picture. But anyway, that's bronze.
Yeah.
And it makes it look like orange chaps.
Yeah.
So it's really worked out good. He asked me, he said, "Do you want me to put some bronze on that?" He said, "That'll make the chaps stick out, it'll make you look better." I was like, "Yeah, go ahead." And I was glad he did. Yeah. And that's the guy too. I'm trying to think of his name too now. See how I am with names.
Mm-hmm. That's why there's Google. You got to figure out how to use it.
I know. I just got to figure out how to use it. Yeah. But yeah, he's from Germany, and he loves climbing mountains. And he came out to Roscoe like my grandfather. He was from Switzerland, but he loved those mountains there at home because they reminded him of the mountains back home.
Mm-hmm.
But that's Frank Anagoffer. But anyway, Frank, he came out there and climbed up a mountain and went to Granite, and the highest point in Montana, and built a house and lives there now, and with his wife. But he asked me, he said, "You want to go?" There's a picture of my great grandfather in an arch, granite arch in the mountains, and 1911. So in 2011, I get him to take me up there, and I say, I want to find that arch because I want to get a picture of myself in there like my great grandfather did.
Mm-hmm.
And so he kind of read a book or something and did something, but he had some ideas of where it approximately was in up Arch Creek, out of the canyon there.
I think that'd be a good place to start.
Yeah. But anyway, we went up there and we spotted the arch and walked up to it and got a picture of me in there like my great grandfather did. But that was pretty fun. And then the next year we went to Granite, and that was super fun too. I always heard my dad would talk about going to Granite, but he'd had so many people tell him about how to get there, because you got to go. There's this one spot that there's an arch, or it's a big snowdrift.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bridge that you go across between, a big really steep place, and you walk across that thing. As part of one of the things on the trip, which that I always was real impressed by. It was so much fun to go walk across that thing. You could ski off it. It wasn't so terrible that you were, really risking your life. But I mean, it was cool. It was a cool place. But when I got to the top of Granite with Frank, and we looked down and saw the view and all that, and he said, "All right, yeah, now all we got to do is go down." And I was like, I never thought of that. And I was like, this going up was pretty easy.
Yeah.
But this going down and having to kind of just feel your way down with your feet, and then find a ledge, to get some traction on. Anyway, it was fun because I had to put my bull riding face on that day to just go down off there and not get him to help me, because he brought some ropes and ties in case we needed it, or he thought he needed it to get me up there, and I was pretty determined that I didn't want him to crack it out.
Yeah.
But it was fun. I don't ever get a chance to share that with a lot of people, but that was, unbelievable trip. It was a lot tougher than I thought too to get up there. It was I'm a northern guy. I had a guy tell me, I thought you'd be from Texas. I've had that a lot. And then when I was traveling, a lot of times I was by myself flying, and they'd always say, "Hey, Tex," or "Where'd you park your horse?" And I always was offended by that. I don't know why.
Left him in Montana, where I'm from.
Yeah. But yeah, I like looking back on that. Rodeo was good to me because it did temper me. And of course, I really do give Tuff Hedeman a lot of credit for that, because he did tease the shit out of me all the time, especially if we were late, and like say we were sitting in a hotel one time in Salt Lake, and it started early, or I don't know why, but it was like, what time does it say it start? Well, our bulls, they ran bulls in for the first section, and then they had a section of bull riding at the end, but we were loaded, and we were, maybe 10-minute drive from the hotel. But anyway, that was how those are the types of things that I always make my best ride, because I never had time to think. And when I don't have time to think, I can really do well.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that's another thing that's so powerful about being sober, if I'm not letting the world get me, and to coerce me and to make me angry, how much more powerful can I be, especially with Jesus? How much more powerful can I be, and blessed? It's not as much the power is as much as I'm blessed, and when I look at it that way, I really think that believing that there is a place for me after I leave here, and I really do believe that, and I don't have a problem sharing that with anybody, because I want to be able to see them when they go. And I want them to know that they have a place there. All you got to do is just say, "I believe in you. Jesus, please help me." And that's been the best thing that ever happened, to me. And I can only say, thanks for letting me come over here and spread the word of him.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know, where you were with that. I got to get my cell phone out here now and, do photos. But I love all this stuff on Instagram that I get. But on that day when the trumpet sounds, a lot of people are going to wish they had listened to their crazy Jesus friends. Amen.
Yeah. So you're on Instagram. Are you on Facebook too?
Yeah. I have that too. Yeah. I can do, yeah. And I'm even on Threads now too.
I don't even know what that is. I refuse. I'm not going to go that far.
Okay.
But what about TikTok? You got a TikTok account?
I don't, but I went on Dougie Hall. I like him. He's fun to listen to. So
Yeah.
I always.
Is he your favorite Indian?
He is. He's cool. Even though I don't know him, I've never really ever met him. Do you know him?
Yeah, I know him. Yeah, I like him. Gotta say, Dougie, not my favorite Indian.
No, really?
No. Yeah, I really like him, but I got a lot of pretty good friends that are Indians too. Oh, no.
Yeah. Well, that's funny because, I've never got to know him, but I sure like listening to him.
Yeah.
He's got and then talking about Mouse.
Did you know Mouse?
No. I know I think I've seen him. I don't know for sure. I know he went to Browning one time, me and Trevor Walker did, and went to a bucking horse fraternity up there.
Mm-hmm.
And that was about the only time that I got up there. And I couldn't believe how many, there's a lot of Indians that's got some pretty nice horses.
Yeah. Yeah, probably my favorite Indian is Roy Whitford.
Oh, yes.
And so,
Mine too.
yeah,
He is.
when I had New West, I sold my card to Roy and Nikki.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
and
see.
all the Whitfords. So Cash and all of them are in on the deal. But yeah, that guy, that guy's awesome. But no, I mean, they got such a passion for it. So it used to be cowboys and Indians, which I've always kind of thought that was bullshit. Like Indians are cowboys. It doesn't really make much sense anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they
You
just,
could never be more statement well said as that right there.
yeah. But no, there's around Browning and even around Crow, there's tons of people raise bucking horses.
Yes, there
Yeah.
is.
And there's some good ones. Like Virgil came from Browning. There's people that'll argue that, but I'm pretty sure.
Really?
That
See,
horse
I
come
don't
from
know, but
Browning.
that's cool to hear. That's
Yeah.
because I didn't have any idea where Virgil came from.
Yeah.
But Browning, I can believe that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. But where I was going with the TikTok comment is everybody's bad mouthing TikTok. It's getting a lot of terrible press because China owns it, which they probably do. But what's worse, China or Mark Zuckerberg? And in my opinion, but there's so much great information on TikTok, which I think there is on Instagram too.
Uh-huh.
Probably just kills more time, but
Well, I need to get on TikTok, but I like say I had nothing against it. And what I've seen on TikTok, I'm like you, it's a good outlet for information.
yeah.
That's power right there, or that's good stuff.
Yeah, and you can train them for good or you can train them for evil. I'm pretty sure that's how that deal works.
And the other thing too, and I know this is off what we were talking about, but it brought back up with the Indian thing. There was never anything more, because it was my good friend Steve Glenn, but he goes down and does the reenactment down there of the Little Bighorn.
Does he do the promoted one or the real bird one?
The real bird one.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the one he does. And he goes down
In Hardin.
Yes.
Yeah, the Custer reenactment.
Yep. And that was, pretty much what I can see from living my life. What happened to the Indian was we wanted their land, and that was one thing that pushed them off. But the only way that they really got them to do that was by taking their food source. And
it was war.
The buffalo.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So that was I think the real battle was that right there. And then when everybody started shooting them, of course, pretty much that was what devastated them.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they've done real well and they've got some beautiful country. So I'm more power to them.
Your lid's on.
Well, like say, at least that would have been something more, what I do back in my drinking days.
Well, it would have slowed you down quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it would. But like say, yeah, and big trails down there on my wife's place in Wyoming that you can still see those trails in the hills down there. And you don't see that up home, There was the buffalo liked it down there too. It's like a high desert.
Yeah.
It is, and I've never seen cows. They really do well down there. Animals do well.
Yeah.
The buffalo did well.
Yeah.
And the Indians did too. I mean, but yeah. So anyway, what else? What else do we need to talk about that?
Probably better talk about rodeo a little bit, huh?
Yeah, we could. Yeah.
So one question I got from what you've already said is when you went to those schools, did you go to a Gary LeFou school?
I didn't go to it, but Gary was there when Roy Cooper and was teaching the calf roping.
Gotcha.
And Gary was there, yeah.
Yeah. So you went to a bronc riding school and you went to a calf roping school and ended up being NFR bull rider. How
right?
many times did you go to the NFR?
I qualified. I rode 7 times and I qualified 8 times.
What happened the 8th time?
I had a dislocation in my between 5 and 6 in my vertebrae, so I didn't. They didn't want me to get on a bull.
Yeah, you can dislocate a vertebrae.
Well, this is maybe I didn't say that right. What happened was when I hit the ground on the back of my neck, I never rolled all the way over. I just kind of stuck like an arrow on the back of my head and neck.
Yeah.
And what it did was when my spine came apart, it twisted. It twisted, and then so it came back. It was like it was
It wasn't in the right spot.
right. It was wasn't in the right spot, and they had to go in there and put it back in line, and then wire it, screw it, tape it.
Yeah.
They did everything. Yeah. So yeah, that was in 95. 95.
Yeah. Pretty successful bull riding career. Anyway, and then coming from that background, but what did you learn from those schools? Like even calf roping, especially with that calf roping instructor. Like that guy's the best.
He is.
Probably still is. Like mentally, what else did you learn? I mean, you had to learn something from everybody that helped you down the road.
Well, what helps me in all this is Roy Cooper. I was 12. I remember I was 12 years old because I got some kind of an award there for being the youngest calf roper do good award. I don't know, but what Roy said was, this is who gets the do good award. And so it was kind of cool because he gave it to me because I would go down there and flank them calves and do what I needed to do as a 12-year-old, I think,
Mm-hmm.
But what he did was he had a poly rope that was red, white, and blue, and he gave it to me.
You still got it?
I do. And I brought it back home, and my dad, I showed him it, and he put it on his saddle, and he had it on there when he was hunting, everything, all the time. So I was so proud of that because my dad was so proud of me to be able to, that he gave me this red, white, and blue rope.
Yeah, that's cool.
The world champion calf roper, Roy Cooper,
Mm-hmm.
So that right there taught me that all those things right there was what taught me that those type of things is people look up to that, and that's power. And so like today, when I go out and do things with people, being an NFR bull rider, and I feel like I'm a successful bull rider. I had a successful career. I didn't win any world championship, but I did win a world championship because I lived the life, and I couldn't have been any happier. And I can go back and always say I wish I would have won it, but when I look back on it, I'm glad I didn't win it because it gave me. I never quit trying. The last time I got on a bull, when I went to Phoenix, Arizona, and after my son was born on March 8th in 2000, I went down there and got on a bull and bucked off and went and put my rope back in the gear bag and flew back home. And I walked off the plane and drove back home, and I didn't leave Montana. I had, I had a son. And so I was like, that was when I said, I'm done. I can't do this and try to be on that place, live my life. So anyway, through that all, the being able to go to Bobby Burgers, when I won the 50,000 at Calgary, that was, I remember, that sent my dad, he was like, that's some pretty cool shit, You win in that rodeo, So those are things that I'll always cherish, But all I had to do was willingness. All it is be willing. I wanted to be a bull rider. I don't know why, but I watched. I mean, when the NFR would come on, there would be one performance is all they would show.
Yep.
And you had one chance to watch 10, what happened in the 9 other performances. You got to see one time in the last performance. But I loved watching Donnie Gay. I mean, that I've got every little book that I saw a Donnie Gay picture, I cut it out of the magazine and I would put tape on it and stick it on the wall right on the top of where my bed was upstairs in our house. And those pictures are still there.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And that was my idol, and that's who I wanted to be. Why I wanted to be a bull rider, I couldn't tell you. I don't know. And why didn't I want to be a saddle bronc rider? I was raised around horses, and we were talking how we were both raised around horses and how, what our opinions were about, what horses and what you do and all that. And then how I'm, learning it, it's a never ending learning process for me to get to learn about horses. So all of these things goes back to being willing. And if anybody asks me, what I learned about bull riding, and the only thing that I could really say to anybody is you've got to be forward. You got to put your, if they've got some horns, that's right where you need to put your head, is right where them horns are, But if you drive your body forward and you keep your arm bent and you don't reach for that front end, you drive your body forward to that front end, all that other stuff will come to you on your legs. Because if you're up on your legs, you can actually squeeze something. But if you're back on the flat of your rear end, you can't squeeze nothing. But that's pretty much it. I know watching Joe Frost, I mean, that guy, that was pretty impressive, watching him ride this year at the NFR. I thought he did a really good job. He was...
Josh Frost.
Yep.
Yep.
And it's cool now. I saw him he's doing some videos of it, but he bought a place and he's getting it all fixed up to make it into cow-calf operation. And it looked like he's doing some farming even too, to get some feed.
Yep.
So anyway, those things are, I love watching rodeo. I love watching, you and what you're doing with rodeo. And that horse that you was out the other day that was jumping and kicking, like, I mean, he was this high off the ground, that horse. And then the other one that was bucking backwards, jumping and kicking and going back towards the bucking chutes the other day. I think it was I got it on Facebook, I think, feed.
Yeah, I'm sure it's something I posted somewhere, but
yeah,
they're amazing, aren't they?
Man.
Yeah.
I just, that's why I love bucking horses, because they're one of the more, they still seem, even though they've AI'd and done that, and I don't know, I always hear that's the only where I hear Clint Johnson's name come up, is he's, doing a lot of that, whatever you call it, when they DNA or put the DNA from another horse and they can have another commotion.
Cloning.
Yes, thank you. I was having one of my, I can't remember name moment.
Cloning's a name.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's fun to see all that going on. But I love that, I heard Hank Franzen say, that bucking horses they're all back when they were all mostly just bred out on the pasture. They were one of the purest breeds of horse that there is, and that's pretty cool, because I really think that a bucking horse is. And if I could come back in life, you know how you say, what would you be?
Yeah.
It'd be pretty fun.
Would you be a good one? Would you be an eliminator or would you be a hopper?
You know, I would like to be like one of them horses that really, not a hopper, but really bucked and not an eliminator. I just don't, you know, I don't like bulls that squirt, take off, duck, don't kick, you know, run you back off your rope and jerk on your elbow. And that's, yeah. But, you know, even if they're really hard to ride and buck hard and they're squirting around there, I don't like it. Even in bucking horses, that's the first thing I look for when I'm watching it is like, how much ground is that horse covering? And if that horse is covering ground, he's hard to ride. But if that horse is hitting and coming up underneath himself, that's where that rocking chair is.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what my dad always said about, you know, I always liked that. You know, his definition of if you find the sweet spot, try to stay there, you know, get in there and stay there. And that's in everything we do in life. You know, we just don't want to, you know, make it an idol, I guess. Jesus is still my idol.
Yeah.
So
are you just watching stuff on social media or do you watch Cowboy Channel? And
I'm Cowboy Channel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about the PBR? Do you watch any PBRs?
Not as much. Not as much. I do like watching the Brazilians, you know, they really have done a great job. Don't get me wrong. I'm not really Jose Vitor Leme. I mean, that guy's unbelievable. You know, so you know, when we were riding, we were going to 100 plus rodeos a year, and then all the PBR or the bull riding. We were going to, if a bull riding added $1,000, I mean, when I was going with you know, Jim and part of that time with Lane and then Tuff, I mean, we would spend whatever it took to get to that, you know, fly, drive, whatever we had to do. If it was added $1,000, you know. So I came from, those guys are really making some money today, which is cool. I really think that's cool. But it's cool for me to be able to say that if that thing added $1,000 and we were in Texas and that bull riding was in Montana where it ain't supposed to be, and I shouldn't talk with a drawl, you know, but I can't help when I start, you know, I live with them, you know, but we would fly up there and try to, you know, win the money. And that's pretty cool, you know, because it was because of, I feel like I'm responsible for that.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, I really do. I feel like I had a part in that. You know, some had more than others, and I'm sure wherever I am in there, it doesn't matter. I just had a part in it. And that's another thing in that, like winning that championship. It's just all part of all the good that I see from what I was able to do, and to be able to share that with you. And, you know, I appreciate you wanting me to come over here and do this because it means a lot to me. And I'm glad you're doing it because, you know, you're creating your legacy. And I think that's cool, you know.
I don't know if you noticed, but I've tried not to talk. So on that subject, what about starting the PBR? I mean, tell the story. What about it? How did it all go down?
It pretty much just went down from I think the biggest thing that made us get together and try to start it was Shaw Sullivan when he was doing the bull riders only, and you know was paying good $10,000, and then we went over to Shaw's place, and I can't remember, it must have been a bull riders only or something down there in Denver, you know, right around in there, but we went out and had a meeting, and he wanted to present this thing to us, what he wanted to do. And he said, you know, we would ride and anything that they I don't know, whatever it did above and beyond, we were going to have a percentage of the profits in that. So he made that offer, and nobody wanted to do that.
He was asking for an investment?
Not an investment, just exclusivity. We would ride
okay.
for the bull riders only.
Mhm.
So we would only ride in his events, and that was where I think most of us felt like we were backed against the wall right there, and because it, like say, we couldn't go to that $1,000 added bull riding,
Yeah.
or or whatever.
Well, who was us? Just what you can remember, how many?
There was originally there was like 23 of us that put in $1,000. Bubba Bailey, the twins, Adam and Gilbert. Yeah, Adam and Gilbert. And then there was, Tuff, Jim, Lane. No. Yeah. No. Lane was gone by then. Yeah, so I'm sitting here trying to think, but I know what was the bull rider from Pink Mountain, Saskatchewan? Daryl Mills. We all put in $1,000, and that got the bull riding, going. And we were out of California because there was an investment guy that was running around with Tuff that I met at the Cow Palace that fall, and his name was Sam Applebaum. And anyway, that was who, went to the hotel room with us, where we had this meeting in just a, hotel room in Scottsdale after a bull riding there. And we all just thought it was a good idea for us we didn't want to do the thing with Shaw. We didn't want to, it was almost like saying we were going to have to ride exclusively for the bull riders only, and we didn't want to be able to do that. So how do you not do that? Let's start our own thing. How do you do that? And that was one of the hardest things, is how do we do this? Because we're just trying to get to the next one, and if a lot of times, we don't know if we got enough money to get to the next one, so it was like, how are we going to do this? And, he came with Tuff to the room. And so we kind of looked over at Sam, and he was, what Sam was he was kind of an investment guy, for, not health insurance, for life insurance. He did stuff like that. And I'm sure he did a lot of other stuff. I just don't know what else it was. But anyway, he was kind of like, well, yeah, I'll take your money, and I'll set up an office. I got an office in California, where I do my business. And so that was where it started, it was right there. And that was in 92. So it wasn't until 94 that we had our first complete season. And Sam got things going and did I give him a lot of credit for doing what he did,
All right, real quick, we got to pay some bills. Got to say thank you to the Bozeman Stampede, Bozeman, Montana, August 7th, 8th, and 9th. You can go to their website to get tickets at bozemanstampede.com. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you I'm going to put the link somewhere, but I'll have somebody do it. So, bozemanstampede.com. Tickets go on sale June 1st. So 23 bull riders got together and got this Sam Applebaum to work for you guys. So then everybody put in 1,000. Is that the rumor? Everybody put in 1,000 to start the PBR.
Yes.
Hired this guy. And then what?
Well, pretty much.
Who did the work?
Well, that's where Sam did a good job, because, a lot of people might cuss Sam, including me, but, he did a good job. He went to Bud Light, and said they were our title sponsor, and so it was like, that was, I remember one of the guys from Bud Light, calling me up on the phone one day, and he was like, if you got that Sam Applebaum, if he's running your PBR, he said, you can just count that we're not going to have any involvement in it. This was a couple years. I don't remember even when that was, but it was probably 95 or 6. Because then Nardo came in,
Who's that?
The guy that does the American
Randy Bernard?
Randy Bernard. And so
Sam got it to the point that Randy took it over.
yes. And
Okay.
and Cody knew Cody's the guy that got to know Randy Bernard.
Lambert.
Yep, Cody Lambert.
Okay.
Yep. And I don't exactly know how, but they met each other and knew each other, and then he promoted a rodeo in California, and I don't even remember what rodeo it is now, but he did really good, and so he was like, we really didn't know for sure, about it, but
Yeah.
Cody just kind of said, the guy, I mentioned it to him, and he would do it, and he would, run it like it's really supposed to be run. And so that was where it came from. Sam went in and negotiated and got some pretty good, endorsements and money from other people. I can't even remember now. It was pretty much the ones that were involved in rodeo. I mean, Bud Light, Wrangler, those types of ones. And they wanted to be involved. And we had TNN, which was, Mesquite Rodeo, and Donnie and Pam Minnick,
Yeah.
and so that was, that was attractive. It got good ratings. And then the bull riding, of course, came on Sunday night, and that worked really good. Everybody wanted, when we went off the air, or when it went off, when TNN, I guess, went off, that's what everybody always, I remember people saying, I missed that, being able to go to watching the PBR on Sunday night, and so that was really good. But then Randy really took it and really did something with it, and so he's really the one that you can give the credit to, for me, as far as I'm concerned. He did really good, and he treated me and everybody else really fair. And there was a lot of, I was on the board at 2 different times, on one time and then off, and then got back on. But it was, a good experience for me to be around and figure out how, you might want things a certain way, but there's so many things that come up that it just can't work, But insurance was one of the hardest ones, But we ended up finally getting, to be a what do you call that? Co-insurance, or
Self-insured.
we could have a policy, and then whatever down payment you had to make if you got hurt, the PBR would pick up that down payment.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that's pretty much what we had negotiated, was we would be the copay. I don't know what that, I don't remember exactly what it was, but we would help on whatever cost it was for any hospital or surgery that needed to be done from your bull riding. So that was good, and having those things. And then, of course, the PBR finals. And the first year was a really good year for me. I'd came back from, I think it was my neck. And 94. 94 is when I went the PBR finals. See, I'm sitting here going, man, I can't believe I broke my neck in 95, and I went to the PBR finals in 94, and I'd led it the whole year. And that was the one thing that Sam did, was we went to Brazil that year, and one of those beer companies over there in Brazil, Tecate or something like that, wanted to be a big sponsor. And of course, if he could get Adriano, to, I pretty much, I had it won before the finals. And so he implemented triple points because that was the only way that he could get Adriano to have a shot at winning the championship.
Which you wanted to do to promote this Mexican beer company?
Yes.
Or Brazilian beer company?
Well, it was going to be some big money, supposedly, from what I heard. I don't know,
Yeah.
but that's what I hear. But that was the reason why I hear that, I don't know if Sam, this is what I think, and I don't want to, I can't help but say I'm accusing him by saying this. So I really don't know how to say it other than there was only one chance for him to be able to get Adriano to win. If he won the average at the PBR finals with triple points, and I don't know exactly where the triple points come from, other than it was never that since 1994.
Which was the first year.
It was the first the first PBR finals. Yep, season and finals that we had.
Yeah,
was in '94, and Adriano won the finals. I was winning the average going into the short round, and across from my name at the top of the list was Bodacious, and it was a stopwatch. It wasn't how they do it now with the camera, or however they do it now, where it's a little more precise. But I didn't make the whistle. I didn't get a score.
Yeah, but that's a pretty cool spot to be in.
You bet. Yeah, no kidding.
How many times did you get on him?
4 times. I got on him twice in Guthrie, and I rode him both times. And the one time that he didn't buck, I was 78 points on him. And I don't know what happened to him. And nobody has a story about Bodacious, but I have the story about Bodacious when he didn't buck. And it was with me in Guthrie. But the second time I rode him, I've heard people say, well, he didn't have that hop skip and that, when I had him at the PBR finals in '94, that was when I'd gotten jerked down by a bull and I broke. It was like cracking an egg, the orbit of my eye. And luckily my eyeball didn't drop down. You know how you see a lot of bull riders get that. But say, I wore a mask, and right before the jump, right before Bodacious turns and goes back to the buck and shoots, he gave me one of those whoop-de-doo and tuck his rear end, pulled me over the front end, and then reared back up. And because I'm riding across there, and and like Tuff said, how do you go about trying to ride this? I'm gonna say it, son of a bitch. This bull is wicked. And he like Tuff would say, just when he pulls you, let him pull you. Just keep your feet down and hang on. And that's how you ride him. You had to let him pull you, because if you tried to not let him pull you, there wasn't no way you could stay up there. You were going to get somersaulted. So let him pull you, keep your feet down, and then when he gave that hop skip and then had his rear end tucked underneath him and then just elevated, right, because you'd be pulled over, because he pulls you over his front end, and then here he comes with the baseball bat, the twin cannons, the whap.
Yeah.
But he did that when I had the mask on. But it was out there. He didn't have it like he did right out as a, first thing right out of the chute, a jump, hop, skip, kind of whammo. But he jump, hop, skip, whammo, and if you watch the video, it's hard to see in the video that they had there. But I had styrofoam in my forehead and on my chin after that, that wallop.
He still hit you.
he hit me with that face mask.
Yeah.
And all it was a hockey face mask, a goalie face mask that I made myself. And I made it to, and Scott Bredding was the one that gave me the idea because he made something one time or something.
Was it before or after it didn't work on Bodacious?
It was before. And then Scott, he had that mask on when he rode him the last time Bodacious was bucked at the NFR in 1996. And so I wasn't going to, I had it in my gear bag, and that was the year I didn't ride because I broke my neck. But I'd qualified. So anyway, I knew he drew him. When Tuff drew him in the 4th or 5th go round, I said, "You know who's in the draw?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I said, "Yeah, you better plan on maybe it could be by your name." And it was. And so he didn't get on him, which was a really good thing. He was he was 40 pounds lighter than what he normally was. I bet at least that, pushing 50.
Tuff was.
Yeah, from when he hit him at the PBR finals. And then he hit him at the PBR finals in '95 and broke his face, and had all that done, and then and then rode at the NFR and did pretty good, for being 40 pounds lighter. And he still looked green, to me. He didn't look good, but he's a tough guy.
Yeah.
He's one tough dude. Yeah.
So getting back to the PBR.
Yeah.
You guys invested it all. $1,000. What's the happy ending?
Well, there was one other time that, and I can't even remember what year, but it was 4 or 5 years later, we let anybody that made the PBR finals 3 times or won a world championship, they could buy more shares in the company.
Mm-hmm.
So it was $3,000 more. We got 3 more shares. So we got 10 originally for our $1,000 original investment, and then they offered 3 more shares for $1,000 a piece. So I bought 3 more shares, and I had the money, then, and so I invested in those 3 more shares. So I really had 13 shares, and then that turned into like 65,000 shares or something after you do whatever the company can do when it does a split or whatever all that is. I don't understand any of it other than it, when we sold our shares then, or when that company, something capital came in and bought the PBR. It was, everybody wanted to sell. And so I would have liked to have, been able to stay on. And they said that they were the opportunity for the writers or the guys that were on the board could go on with a new organization, but and I wasn't on the board then. So anyway, those 13 shares or 3, it actually was $4,000 that I invested in that $4.5 million that we got back. So it was really good. One of the best things I did as far as, and being involved in the bull riding, to say, did I win that? No, but I did kind of,
Yeah.
because it was because of the bull riding that I was able to have that opportunity. Yeah. So,
well, what I think is so cool about that story is you got 4,000 in it, you get $4.5 million back, but
amen.
You didn't put a dime into it as an investment. It was out of the goodness of your heart. Like that first 1,000, like that was to make things better. That was to help the sport.
Amen. Yeah.
And then it financially returned like it did.
Yep, it did. And it's really cool to see that. And it's really cool to see those guys that are riding in the team deal. They're making, I've heard like a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know how much for sure, and I don't even want to say, but they're pushing with their sponsors and everything. You know, I think they could be making $1 million a year.
Yeah.
You know, maybe more. So
you were with DeWalt, correct?
yes.
How much was that sponsorship? What was that deal?
It was one of the better ones out there, and I got 30,000 the last year I rode, and then I was gonna get 35 the year I retired in 2000. So that was those were, if anybody was getting more than that, I don't know who it was.
Yeah, then that was a stellar deal. I mean, unheard of, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it was unheard of, but it was, I don't know, because I don't know what like Donnie Gay gets from Wrangler and stuff like that have been there for a long time. But it was really good, you know, and DeWalt was a good company, and
yeah,
I really liked the people there, and they were good to me, and I tried to be as good to them as I could too. Other than I didn't win a world championship for them.
You can't get it all.
That's right.
Yeah.
There you go. But yeah, with that money, I was able to come back here and do everything that I needed to do, because my dad, you know, he really didn't have any haying equipment. You know, he had an old 14T Model T, you know, baler with an engine you had to crank it to start it. And, you know, an old John Deere H or something, single wheel on the front tractor, you know, and then an International that was, you know, pulled the baler.
International.
Yeah, an International. Yeah. You know, but, you know, it was, you know, I was able to come back, and I got a steel corral now, you know, that I brand our cattle in, which you're invited to come. I know you're going to be busy, but the middle of June when we brand.
Appreciate it.
But you're invited when you have time. So you got to call me, and you're welcome.
That's the most awkward invitation I've ever got to a branding.
Well, you're pretty busy.
Yeah, I'm not as busy as you think, but there's no sense in me arguing with you.
But yeah, that's, you know, the opportunity that bull riding has given me, you know, is, you know, I can't, other than the only person, you know, I'm going to say that I can give credit is who I've been given the credit to, and that's who gets it again, you know. It's not because of me anymore. Yeah. And the reason why I didn't world championship, it's not because of me, it's because of him. That's his plan, you know, and I accept it.
Yeah. So I think the perfect way to end this, which has been awesome, is when we were talking in the shop a little while ago, you talked about like looking back on your rodeo career. Can you talk about that a little bit?
And then, like, I can't remember looking back on it kind of as in
what it appears to be now.
Yeah, I'm trying to think now what it appears to be. Oh yeah, I know. It's not like it didn't really happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do have those moments, and it was fun sharing that with you, because, you know, I'll wake up and I'll be like, you know, and I don't remember my dreams when I wake up. I don't know. That's weird, you know, because I will every now and then, but it's usually nothing associated with bull riding or rodeo. And so I know that there's a lot going on when I'm sleeping, and, you know, in my dreams when I dream, because I know I damn well dream. I just don't remember a lot of my dreams. But what I almost, you know, I'm pretty well convinced sometimes when I wake up that it didn't really happen, you know, because it's amazing when you look back on it. For me, you know, when I sit here and, okay, did I really rodeo with Lane Frost? You know, and I'll tell people that today and say, did you know who Lane Frost? Oh, we saw 8 seconds. Yeah, we know who he is, you know. And it's like, well, I got to I got to rodeo with that guy. You know, I rode on a plane with him from Oakdale back to Denver, and he asked me if he'd like to, they were looking for another guy to enter and ride with them, you know, go with them. And he asked me on that trip, you know, if I wanted to rodeo with him. I was like, man, you know, that was like better than winning $4.5 million right there, man. I mean, to tell you, looking back on it, well, how could you ask to go and one of the most genuine, super nice guys, Clyde and Elsie, you know, the whole Frost family. You know, you can't. I mean, when I look back on it and go, you know, it really makes a good story, you know. And I'm gonna see him again. I know because Elsie says she knows he accepted Christ. You know, I didn't ever really ever have that conversation with him about where he was with his, you know, belief then, but she does, you know, and so that's what matters. Mama knows, you know,
Mm-hmm.
so you know, but he is, you know, he is the Jesus of bull riding. Lane is, you know, and it was because of Lane that all this happened. You know, all why it's where it is today. You know, and that's who. I mean, you can give Tuff a lot of the credit on that. You know, because he's done a lot too. You know, he devoted his life when he got done riding. You know, he still, even not with the PBR, you know, he did some funny things, I think, you know, I don't know. Could I say that he actually did the things when it says, you know, there's a book out there that says fried Twinkies and buckle bunnies? You know, that could be a bunch of BS, you know. I don't know, you know. But it doesn't matter because, you know, in life we'll have trouble. We're going to have trouble. I'm going to be a sinner until the day I die. I'm not going to sin, but I'm not trying to now. And I ask for forgiveness and try not to do the same one over, you know, and that's who Lane was to me. That was Lane Frost. And what a perfect guy for me to be able to be around and get to know in really the year and a half that I actually got around him enough to really get to know him for who he was. and and then Freckles, you know, Freckles Brown and him were tight, you know. If anybody thinks that wasn't real, that was, you know, he was right there when he died, and you know, in the hospital. And you know, that was fun. And I got to go down there and gather some cattle from Edith that Lane had got and bought from Edith Brown, Freckles' wife, after Freckles died. And it was, you know, that was a really fun trip that I had with him down there and he was, you know, wanted to have a place and raise his own cattle and horses. And then Kelly, you know, I got to talk to her this year, his wife, and you know, it's amazing. She's just a wonderful lady, unbelievable too, and where she's gone, you know. And we talked life today without Lane, you know.
Yeah.
And it was really cool to catch up with her this year because I sent Elsie a happy birthday, Merry Christmas, not happy birthday. And I always call her on the end of July when Lane got killed, and I always, you know, want to tell her I'm thinking of her and Clyde. And but it was fun talking to Kelly and then having kids. You know, they wanted to have some kids, and that wasn't able. Congratulations, by the way, on your son and daughter. There ain't nothing better, you know. And that was, you know, what they wanted to do, you know. And so it's cool to see Kelly be able to have, you know, she's got two, I think, little girls.
Yeah.
And the youngest one is like what you say yours is just a bear cat,
Yeah.
a terror.
Fact.
But that's all the miraculous, ongoing miraculous lesson that I'm getting in life. And I can only give the credit to you know who, and because of that, I am so blessed. And like say, I'm going to encourage everybody to go that path, to see that he did really come. Jesus is really, he did go into that lady's womb called Mary, and he was really born and lived a sinless life for 33 years, you know, and then walked, Passion of the Christ. The part that gets me in that movie, the one that really hits me, and if you didn't, I don't know if you got to see that or not, but if you do, get it, watch it, because this is the part that really gets me in that, and this is what happens to me and all of us through our lives. The whole time he's dragging that cross that they're going to nail him to up that hill and up them steps, going up on that hill, is the devil, and he's watching every move that guy's making. If he gets there, is he really want to get there? How bad does he want to stay on? He wants to stay on for you, and for me. And that's what got him up on that hill and nailed to that cross. And the guy that was next to him on his right, he said, I heard you're you know, the Almighty, and he said, what do I got to do? He said, all you got to do is come with me. And when he said that, supposedly what the Bible says, he went to heaven with Jesus, you know. So, that's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool movie, and it's really good. It was really good for me to watch that because it really, portrays what really happened. And so all those things are, I don't know. I don't want to get too much on everything, but I mean, it is one of the best things that ever happened to me is my relationship. It's not my belief. I have a relationship with Christ. I know who he is and he knows me better than anybody. I always think have you ever seen when the when a how do you say this, when a man's sperm and a woman's, what do you call that, egg
Embryo.
yeah, embryo, when that makes a connection, how it makes a flash. I've seen that, and it's true that when the egg and the embryo or the sperm make a connection, there's a flash of light. And that is like, I mean, that was on my Instagram or whatever feed on my phone. But I believe in that. I believe that.
I better have to check into that one.
Yeah. Well, and I want to check into it too. I wish we had time here to do it
Yeah.
because it's supposedly, what really happens. And that's the Holy Spirit. To me, that's what that is the Holy Spirit, because that's what's in me. Once I said, Jesus, I want you to be in charge. I'm not in charge, and I'm going to trust you. And that's the hardest one for me, is being able to trust that, to be able to say, okay, I've done this, and sometimes I got to put my head down and bust it, and if I don't put my head down and try to bust my head anymore, that hurts. And he's tried to teach me that. That's why I was a bull rider. He hit me on the head enough. He's like, he's going to finally get tired of it. But I don't have to put my head down and hit anymore, And that is so fun, because if I put my trust in him, it always works out better than I ever in my wildest dream expected. And there's so many of those things that are going on all the time that I could write a book. And I always tell my wife, I need to start writing all these miracles down because there's so many of them, I can't keep track of them all. And some of them are little and some of them are bigger than others, But it's just really some of the coolest thing. Yeah. So the flash, and that's inside that's when it happens, inside the female. Yeah. And so you, you're going to think I was drinking again now.
Like I said, you have the floor.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. Because, I like talking about Jesus, because that's who gets me through everything that I got to go through. And he's a lot, there's another thing that happened to me when I was in college, and drinking. And one of the gals that I went to high school with, we fornicated in the car in college, both of us pretty drunk. And she ended up pregnant. So I, went over and talked to her and about it. And I was a freshman in college. And I said, I don't want to marry you. I want to be a bull rider. I'm sorry this happened. And she was like, well, she wasn't sorry it happened. She, accepted it pretty well, it seemed to me, and she said, I don't want to not have him or have the baby. And so I said, okay, I'll help you with whatever, I'll try to help you with whatever cost there is. And then can we adopt the child then? And, she did. And then she kept in contact with him and then kept him, he knew who I was and had stuff on me about my bull riding career and all that. And I always, long story short, I always said, well, hopefully he'll come and knock on my door someday because I'll let him in. And it didn't happen that way. It happened when I married Jana. We're in a grocery store in Red Lodge, and this lady walked by, and we're both in there kind of back and forth. We aren't right together. And she goes, I know that girl. And I was like, I never seen her before, And then she's like, I got to say hello to her. And then walked around, and we couldn't find her. And then all of a sudden, here she come and went over there and was looking in the freezer there at some meat or something. And she went over there and said, hey, how are you doing? And anyway, she's like, oh, good to see you. I went back when they went to school together. It was that far ago. And she's like, well, what are you doing now? She's like, oh, I remarried. And who's that? And Jana, my wife, said, well, Clint Branger and the bull rider. And I'm standing over there, she doesn't know I'm there.
Just avoiding the conversation because you don't like conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
But then she says, well, I know of him. And she's like,
funny story.
Yeah, funny story. She said, I'm best friends with the gal that he had the baby with. And then she was like, oh, you might not know. And Jana was like, no, I know. Yeah, he told me about that. So that's so cool. That's so cool. I'm glad you know.
Mm-hmm.
And well, then from that she got me Rosanna's number, and I called. That's the mama to the baby we had, and called her and got Brandon's number. That's our son. Blood by blood.
Yeah.
We didn't raise him. But she was around. She had 5 other kids in her marriage, so that was cool to see. So then from that, then it was all connected to us getting together and having dinner, and we had a steak together and got to know each other. And then tomorrow we're going to Billings because he has a boy, and his name's Benjamin, and we're gonna go celebrate his birthday, which was about a month ago now, and my mom's birthday tomorrow at Carver's in Billings. So yeah, that's one of, is that a miracle? Is that not a miracle right there? That's a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was never gonna probably knock on my door, and I probably wasn't gonna go knock on his, but he fixed it to where it worked the way it worked, unbelievably.
Yeah.
And is that because of just chance? I don't believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool stuff. And that's just one of the miracles. How he threaded that together,
Yeah.
to where it would all work out.
Into where it would work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we probably better call her quits, but thanks.
You bet. I want to go see some of these horses in some of this place too.
Absolutely. Yep, we'll go do it.
Okay, thank you.